Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Rise in Mourning, Finding Jesus at the Threshing Floor. I'm your host, Kristen Hajar. It's raining outside right now. I have a nice little hot tea. This episode is going to be about the seasons that follow and a little bit of sibling loss thrown in there and how to deal with that if you have other children that you have to navigate through this grief journey. We are in holiday season now, so I figured it'd be appropriate to slot this episode in for you guys so that you can also take some tips from this episode now that the holiday season is upon us. Because after the initial shock fades and the fog begins to thin a little bit, life keeps going, whether we like it or not. Birthdays come, holidays come, and somehow you're expected to make miracles and celebrate too. And to keep traditions alive, to be present for your other children while inside you barely feel like you're surviving. It's never easy, no matter if you're 3 days in or year 3 after losing your special person. But I hope that you can take something from my experience. Before I continue, guys, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave me comments, feedback. I'd love to hear from you guys. And please follow me on my socials at Rise in Mourning. So Alec passed in June. And just a few short months later came my birthday in August, and his in September, and then the holidays crept up. All lined up like mountains I didn't have the strength to climb. I remember my first birthday without him, the guilt of waking up and he wasn't here. I was alive and that he wasn't. I didn't want cake. I didn't want to celebrate my life. Everything just felt wrong. There was this darkness settled over everything. Even when moments were supposed to feel light, I was pretending on the outside. I got really good at it for many years. You pretend. You have to put on a happy face for the world to accept you because it's uncomfortable for everyone. No one knows what to do with you when you're grieving. No one wants to even talk about it, which is really sad. So you just have to pretend. And yet I had 3 little boys at home watching me and waiting for me to see how life is supposed to look now. They still wanted Christmas lights and Christmas magic and birthday candles and laughter. And why wouldn't they? They're children, and I didn't want to take that away from them. Even though it killed me inside to even move a muscle, I still wanted to show up for them. And I just didn't have the heart to take that from them. So I did what I could, and some years celebrating looked like hardly anything, just going through the motions, buying the cake, lighting those candles, and crying after everybody went to bed, or shutting myself in my room during a party or after a party. Some years it felt like just decorating one small corner of the house, not because I had the energy, but because I wanted my boys to still feel something like normal. That's what love does in grief. It keeps moving, even when your spirit can barely crawl. If you've ever been there, caught between wanting to protect your children's joy and barely holding yourself together, you're not alone. There is no right way to celebrate after loss. There's only what you can manage, and sometimes that's enough. And if you're a mom and you have multiple children, you have to keep showing up. It's the hardest thing to do, and I did not do that very well. As you'll also hear in later episodes, my husband was my rock, but in those holiday times, somehow I mustered up the energy and I showed up for my boys. And I hope that when they grow up and they look back in these moments that I still made part of their life magic, even when it hurt so much. I also want to talk about something that often gets lost in grief conversation, sibling loss. Because children grieve too, they just grieve differently than us. They don't always have the words, but they feel everything and they ask questions about everything. Those questions are tough, but you have to answer them as honestly and as best as possible, depending on their age, the best that you can. I never wanted to leave my boys in more of a confused or hurt state than they already were, even though it hurt me to talk about Christmas things. I remember my 3rd son. Now, at the time, I think he was 3 years old. It was Christmas time, and he asked me if Alec was going to come home for Christmas, and that he wanted Alec to come home for Christmas, and if Santa was going to bring him home for Christmas, all these kind of, questions. And I was dying inside. And of course, I didn't know what to say. I didn't really have the words, but all I could say that I can remember is that your little brother is not coming home for Christmas. He's with Jesus now, and I'm sorry. I'm sorry he's not coming home for Christmas. And then I don't know. I don't know how I changed the topic, or sometimes I ask them if they want to see pictures or videos. But in that time, I was just so numb, especially after the first Christmas. All I could do was just comfort him and just be there for him and hold him and give him kisses when he was missing his little brother. So just because kids grieve differently or they might show it in a different way, just don't forget to be gentle to them too and try to help them as much as possible. I'll never forget the man that met us at the hospital the day Alec passed. I've asked my husband this. I don't know his name. I can't remember his name, and I don't remember if he was like a pastor or like what he was, but I do remember him saying something that he was like usually called to these situations when people have lost a family member in a hospital. So he came to that hospital that night, and I really believe he was a man sent by God, because in all the chaos and the confusion that was going on that night, he came in and gently spoke to my husband and I with such clarity and grace. He told us how to talk to our boys, that he had been through this process before and he's seen both sides of what can happen possibly. So he told us how to talk to our boys, how to tell them that their little brother had passed away, honestly, but with love. He said, don't hide it. Don't sugarcoat it. Children can handle truth when it's given to them with gentleness. And I found that to be true 100% of the time, and not even just in this scenario of loss and grief, but if you tell your children the truth in the way that they can receive it, it is always well received by children. He reminded us to say Alec's name often around the house. He told us to keep his pictures up, which of course I wouldn't have taken down anyways, but some families do. Some families process grief differently, and they want to take pictures down and they want to erase memories because they're so hurt. But he reminded us not to do that. He told us to let them ask questions whenever they want, to let them cry, and to let them see us cry too, because that's also part of the process, is that when something happens so horrifically in a family, letting the boys see us process and heal during these years, letting them see us fall apart and cry and pick each other up and be there for each other. That is how I feel my boys have come out of this so unscathed, if you will, because we were so honest with them. We let them cry and talk whenever they wanted. We let them watch videos and pictures of him whenever they wanted, even though sometimes it was hard for my husband and I to look at them in that moment. But we just let them. We let them process their little brother's death as best as we could. And I just hope and pray that how we've done this together is why that they are just so good and normal, in the sense of, however anybody is normal, but that they are so good and that they are well and that they have processed this and they haven't gone off, in some deep, dark hole. They haven't gone off into terrible manners and behaviors or anything like that. Of course, if that did happen, we would seek out therapy for them too, but that just hasn't been the case. And I'm so grateful to God that he's kind of saved them from this, that he's let them land a little bit softly with all of this. And I'm just grateful. So I feel terrible. I don't remember the nice man's name that came to the hospital for us that night, but I'll never forget what he gave us that night. Permission to be human parents in the midst of unthinkable pain. He showed us that the best way to help our children was to grieve with them, to let them see that grief is love that has nowhere to go, and to keep showing them that love doesn't end, even when life does. He told us that we should let the boys go to Alec's funeral, and if we didn't, it could have negative impacts on them as they got older, because they never get the closure that they need. It was a lot to take in at the time, but it was advice that we welcomed and that we really needed. We trusted his advice and we did the best that we could. Our boys have grown through their grief in their own ways. There have been hard conversations, quiet questions in bed at night sometimes, and tender moments where they've surprised me with their wisdom. Those first years, birthdays, holidays, all of it. I can hardly remember them clearly now, which makes me sad, but I know that that's just the way my brain was protecting me. They were a blur of survival and sorrow. But even in that darkness, I can see now that God was still there, whispering through the small moments, through the rainbows in the sky, through the laughter of my boys when I thought I'd never laugh again. He was reminding me, I think, that when everything feels broken, love remains. And sometimes love looks like showing up halfway. It looks like choosing presence even when your heart feels absent. Holidays and celebrations have just started to change for me this year, and I had to make them to be what I needed them to be, obviously for my family as well. But as a mom, we're the ones that carry out the traditions or make new traditions. So I needed to change them. I had to shift some things around, had to ask for help, and I made them more personal because in the beginning, I also didn't know how I wanted to honor my son through, birthday celebrations and all of that stuff. So I kind of just stuck with what I did the very first year, and I continued that until this past year. I knew it didn't feel right at the time. It just didn't feel personal. So it took me this long to find something that I feel like all our family was happy with and felt special. And I think that finally this year, it's starting to feel like honor, gratitude, and special rather than complete torture. It took me 5 years though to get to this place after trial and error. But I feel like I'm finally making traditions that we can enjoy and value as a family. You don't owe the world your strength or your smiles. You only owe yourself and your loved ones your presence, whatever that looks like today for you. Let the celebration be small if it needs to be. Let it be messy. Let it be real. Because even in mourning, love can rise. And love, I've learned, is the only thing strong enough to survive loss. So what happened after the holidays passed? The world kept spinning. People went back to work. Life went back to normal, but I didn't. I was still stuck somewhere between heartbreak and survival. And that's when I started learning the truth. Grief doesn't come in stages, and it changes everything. In the next episode, I want to talk about that myth, the idea that we're just supposed to move on, because the truth is we don't move on from grief. We move with. And learning to live with grief is one of the hardest, most holy lessons there is. Okay, friends, thank you for listening today. Until next time, I'm your host, Kristen Hajar, and this is Rise in Mourning, because even in mourning, we rise.